Well, CW. We meet again, you punk. This has been a long time coming. We all knew it was gonna happen, and it's about time because I got shit to say. It took me time, 8 months to be exact, and I'm a little late, but who cares? Today, we are gonna talk about a show that completely took the world by storm, a true icon of the 2010s. See, I think when it comes to teen television, it's hard to find phenomenons that were as strong as the Vampire Diaries. Not that there weren't any, but when we talk about iconic teen dramas, especially in the supernatural realm, chances are it's gonna be the first one to come up. And for good reason. The Vampire Diaries came out at the perfect time. The pilot aired on the CW on September 10, 2009, just 10 months after the release of the first Twilight film. It was brilliant timing. The Twilight craze was in full effect, but fans had to wait for the next movies to come out, which usually took a couple years, and The Vampire Diaries became the promise of satisfying that craving on a weekly basis. It was bound to be a hit. The timing was too good. And it was a hit. While it was airing, The Vampire Diaries was the biggest show the CW had ever produced at the time. Bigger than the likes of Smallville, Supernatural, or even Gossip Girl. And it was an absolute pop culture monument almost instantly. The fan base grew so fast and became so big, it was impossible not to see it. This show was everywhere. And I know a lot of you guys are already salivating at the idea of me coming on here and dropping a diss track on TVD and all of its insane antics for 2 hours straight. But guys, I have a secret. I actually used to like this show. Like, a lot. I think I'm one of those people that fell into the Vampire Diaries wave at the perfect moment. This show premiered 4 days before my 15th birthday, and it perfectly matched the angsty vibes of the moody teenager I was back then. I looked like this, by the way, let's not talk about it. I loved the Vampire Diaries as a teenager, and to be fair, despite being worthy of a lot of criticism, I still firmly believe the show has its merits, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute. But it's also a show that is notorious for its flaws. And I think it is no secret that The Vampire Diaries is a little bit of a mess. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's scale back for a minute. So, for the uninitiated, The Vampire Diaries is the story of Elena Gilbert, a teenage girl from a small town of Mystic Falls in the state of Virginia. When we meet her, Elena is depressed and feeling a bit lost a few months after the tragic death of her parents in a car accident. She's slowly trying to pick herself up after her loss, and we follow her as she attempts to take care of herself and her little brother at the start of a new school year. She's 100% determined to get a sense of normalcy back in her daily routine, but Elena's life takes a drastic turn when, on the first day of school, she crosses paths with Stefan Salvatore, a mysterious new student with a lot of secrets.
I'm Elena.
I'm Stefan.
I know. We have history together.
As she learns to know Stefan and gets attached to him, she begins to uncover the truth behind his enigmatic persona and is confronted to a terrifying reality. Stefan is a vampire. Before she knows it, Elena is thrown in a world of mythical creatures and supernatural shenanigans that reveal the true nature of this town she thought she knew her entire life. And it is only made even more horrific when Damon Salvatore, Stefan's older brother, arrives in town and goes on a violent killing spree. The premise is just kind of alright, but I gotta say, part of me was really excited to rewatch this show. I didn't remember a lot from the early seasons. I had only watched them once as a teenager. So the issue is that my most vivid memories of the Vampire Diaries are memories of the later seasons, which does not work in the show's favor because these seasons are really bad. See, The Vampire Diaries had for showrunner a now notoriously disliked figure in teen television, Julie Plec. That's her. Julie Plec developed The Vampire Diaries with her buddy Kevin Williamson, who is mostly known for creating Dawson's Creek as well as for being the writer of iconic movies like Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer. Yeah, just that. Together, they decided to adapt the Vampire Diaries series of novels written by L.J. Smith, and no, I can already see you screaming about Twilight ripoffs, but believe it or not, the Vampire Diaries novels were here first. They came out in the 90s. There's a whole drama about L.J. Smith not actually owning the rights to the novels, a whole thing about the company that hired her to write the novels, but that's a whole other can of worms I don't want to get into. But I highly recommend watching Jenny Nicholson's video about the Vampire Diaries if you haven't already. She breaks it down extremely well. Anyways, Julie and Kevin worked their asses off to get the show off the ground, and eventually a pilot was picked up by the CW, and like I said earlier, on September 10, 2009, the Vampire Diaries finally hit the screens.
Hello, brother.
And to say it was a strong run would be an understatement. 8 seasons, 171 episodes, 2 spin-off shows, 39 awards, and even a canon DC Comics series. Like, this show really took a generation of teenagers by storm. It was a big deal. And it's not difficult to understand why. Let's dive into the show, shall we? Ooh, you come and get it. Too far, yeah, but I scan it. Neon West, you can understand it. Weak boys will get offended. Hey, you're staring blankly. You don't look so happy.
Crow's a bit much, don't you think?
Wait till you see what I can do with the fog.
Season 1 of The Vampire Diaries was just a winning formula for this type of show, and it was a really distinct type of experience to watch it again because there was just so much I didn't remember about it. For one, I had completely forgotten how violent this show was for no reason, especially for a CW show. The early episodes all start with a horror sequence where people are murdered by Damon, who acts more like a slasher villain early on, and it's surprisingly really fun. I was surprised to be reminded that some of those scenes are actually kinda hardcore. They have no right to be as insanely violent as they are. Literally, episode 2 starts with a couple camping in the woods, and the woman is alone inside of the tent and she hears rain. She gets bummed and goes outside and realizes it's actually the blood of her lover raining down on the tent as he hangs from a tree. That's so fucking metal for no reason, especially because right after that scene, the show just casually goes back to cute and cheesy romance, and it's such a weird contrast from the horror. The tone of the Vampire Diaries is all over the place, and just in general, I had forgotten how much horror there was in these early episodes. No joke, every single time Damon appears in a scene in the first 3 episodes, his arrival is a jump scare. But anyway, season 1 does a solid job at introducing you to everything happening here. This show has a lot of characters, a little too many of them if you ask me, but it establishes every single one of them fairly well. Elena is trying her best to get over her parents' death. She's far from there, but she has hope that things will get better. We also find out towards the end of the pilot that Elena was actually in the car with her parents when the crash happened, but she survived and they didn't. So she's not only grieving her parents, she's also riddled with survivor's guilt, and she doesn't understand why she's still alive. And none of that is helped by the confusion her family members are feeling. Her little brother Jeremy is also struggling to grieve and has turned to drugs in an attempt to cope with his pain. Their Aunt Jenna has become their legal guardian, but she's very young. If I remember well, she's in her late 20s, and she feels completely in over her head when it comes to being responsible for the lives of 2 teenagers. We're also introduced to Bonnie, Elena's best friend, who gets caught up in her own can of worms when she starts having strange visions and discovers she can do things nobody should be able to do. We'll talk more about Bonnie later because I got a lot of thoughts. Later, we also get to meet Caroline, the obnoxious, popular girl from school who seems to think she's really close to Elena and Bonnie, but it's obvious to everyone that her friendship with them is very one-sided. And then we get to meet Stefan, the mysterious, broody type guy who is clearly hiding something.
Hold up. Who's this? All I see is back.
It's a hot back.
What the fuck? Who says that? We quickly find out he's a vampire, but he refuses to kill people and he refuses to feed on human blood. So instead, he feeds on animal blood. He's back in Mystic Falls after several decades away, and while we don't exactly know why yet, we know it has something to do with Elena. It's not the most intriguing setup in the world, but it does the job. The characters, for the most part, all start the show in an acceptable way. It's funny to look at them and try to perceive them as teenagers. They all look way too old. Like, look at Matt Donovan. Look at him. This show asks you to believe that this guy is 17 years old. Stefan is also supposed to be 17, but Paul Wesley, who plays Stefan, was already 26 or 27 years old when he picked up the role. Elena is 17 as well, and her Aunt Jenna is around 29 or 30 years old, but in real life, Nina Dobrev, who plays Elena, is only about a year and a half younger than Sarah Canning, who plays Aunt Jenna. The age-inappropriate casting here is an absolute shit show. It's ridiculous, and I'll never understand why American TV does that. Also, the dialogue is just so funny to me. The type of dialogue in The Vampire Diaries is one that is only common to American television, and I like to call that type of dialogue the Hollywood dialect. The way these people talk makes it impossible to believe them as characters because not a single person on this planet actually talks like that. It's this unnatural, heavily censored and contrived way of speaking that just doesn't seem normal.
Stop, alright? You need to chill yourself, alright?
I've talked about this before, but I honestly don't understand why Americans are so conservative when it comes to swearing on television, because it makes absolutely no sense. Look at the show we're watching. Like I said earlier, The Vampire Diaries is an insanely violent show. We watch people get beheaded, hearts getting ripped out of chests, you watch corpses in the weirdest dispositions ever. There's so much blood in this show, and some seriously fucked up imagery in a program aimed at teenagers. And apparently, that's totally fine, but the characters can't say fuck because somehow that's going too far. Explain to me how that makes sense, Captain. Anyways, aside from all that, the characters are alright. I do like the way they're introduced for the most part, and I like how everyone seems to have a distinct storyline from the jump. I also really like Damon in this season. I kind of forgot he was the first real villain of the show, and I gotta admit, it works extremely well. Like, he's actually an excellent villain. The Stefan versus Damon dynamic is really compelling, slowly unfolding their history and how these two brothers have come to hate each other this much is really compelling, and knowing this whole time that Damon is back in Mystic Falls for a reason, that he has a plan but we don't immediately know what he's trying to do, is really effective as a point of intrigue. I like that it's established from the get-go that Stefan cannot defeat Damon by just fighting him, because Stefan doesn't drink human blood, which makes him significantly weaker than Damon. The show lets you know almost immediately, if it comes down to a physical fight between the brothers, Stefan will lose every single time. There is no question there. So instead, the tension lies in Stefan having to outsmart Damon and essentially beat him at his own game, which is interesting because this mental battle shows that Damon is not only a brutally vicious and cruel antagonist, but he also reveals himself to be incredibly intelligent and calculated. He's always one step ahead, and even if you manage to one-up him, he'll balance the scale almost immediately with a trail of blood.
No! Anyone, anytime, anyplace.
I like how everybody essentially spends the season trying to make sure Damon doesn't get upset because he's so incredibly dangerous and unpredictable that doing anything that tickles his nerves could lead to the death of dozens of people. I also loved finding out that his big evil plan is actually not really evil. He's just trying to save the woman he loves. In a way, Damon is the hero of his own story, which leads us to discovering that 145 years ago, Damon and Stefan were caught in a love triangle with a woman named Catherine, who was a vampire, and she also happens to look exactly like Elena. How is it possible? We don't know. Why is Elena an exact replica of Catherine? Total mystery. But we find out that back in 1864, a witch buried Catherine and other vampires in a tomb located under a church in Mystic Falls. And Damon has spent over 100 years trying to find a way to get Catherine out of there. I like that a lot, actually. I like that Damon isn't just a mustache-twirling villain who is evil just for the sake of it in this season. He actually has solid motivations that kind of humanize him.
I have a bigger surprise, Stefan. I'm gonna bring her back.
The whole vampire lore of the show can be a bit cringe at times, but some of it is interesting. I like the way humans get turned into vampires. There's a whole process to it. It's not just a single bite and boom, you're a vampire too. It's actually really different. To become a vampire, you first need to drink the blood of a vampire. Once that's done, once you have vampire blood in your system, you have to die. It doesn't matter how, you just need to be dead. The vampire blood will then take over and bring you back to life, but only sort of. Once you wake up, you're in a state of transition. To complete the transition and finally become a vampire, you have to drink human blood within 24 hours. And if you don't drink human blood within 24 hours, you'll just die again, and this time you'll be dead for good. I like that. I don't know why, but it adds a lot of narrative tension when certain people get turned. On the other side of it, though, I think the idea of having vampires wear magic rings to be able to walk outside during the day is incredibly stupid. Same goes for humans wearing magic rings that bring them back to life if they die due to supernatural reasons. The whole magic ring thing on this show is so fucking dumb. That said, on paper, season 1 is a solid introduction to this universe. It's not perfect in any way, it is incredibly flawed, but I'd say that overall, season 1 is a fairly well-balanced season with some interesting storylines to follow and some really bad storylines that could have been avoided. The storyline of Vicky Donovan becoming a vampire slows down the pacing of the season a bit, but it still has a fairly effective progression. The idea of Vicky being a huge problem as a vampire because she's a drug addict, which now makes her a blood addict, is kinda stupid, but the show pulls a really clever twist on you by making you believe that Stefan will become her mentor and teach her how to control her thirst for blood, which is kind of expected since she's one of the main characters, but instead, Vicky becomes too uncontrollable and Stefan finds himself in a position where his only option is to kill her, which he does. The overall romance of Stefan and Elena is alright. They have enough chemistry to make it work, which is funny because Nina Dobrev has opened up in the last few years about the fact that her and Paul Wesley actually really disliked each other during the filming of season 1. They did not get along, but they work well enough on screen. There's absolutely nothing complex about their relationship. It's really designed to emulate the codes of Twilight while taking elements of its own source material, but I don't mind it. Learning more about Catherine and how dangerous and manipulative she was back when they knew her in 1864 is also very compelling. Knowing that both Damon and Stefan are still internally dealing with the fact that they were forced to love her because she used her power of compulsion on them is really sad. And it's even more sad to learn later on that Damon was actually never compelled by Catherine and his love for her was real the whole time. I like that neither of the brothers ever find out if Catherine was ever actually in love with them for real, and the lack of closure has fucked with their heads for over 100 years.
She compelled us. We didn't have a choice. It took me years to sort that out, to truly understand what she did to us.
Oh no, Stefan. We are not taking that on tonight.
And then, one of the big twists of the season comes in episode 14 when it's revealed that Catherine was never actually in the tomb with the other vampires. She actually managed to escape before it was sealed, and she's just been living her life for the past century, and Damon realizes in a heartbreaking way that everything he did to save her didn't matter. Not just because Catherine wasn't in the tomb, but because another vampire named Anna reveals to him that she saw Catherine back in 1983, and that Catherine knew that Damon was still alive and looking for her, and she knew where he was, but she just didn't care. That revelation completely destroys Damon's entire reality because he was convinced their love was real. He spent 145 years trying to get back to a love he did not realize was never reciprocated.
That's rough, buddy.
The one place where the season truly loses me is in the storyline with the tomb vampires. Once they get out of the tomb and return to Mystic Falls, there's a significant amount of time in the show devoted to them being in hiding and plotting to take over the town, and I gotta say, they are insanely boring. First of all, it's never really made clear what they're actually trying to do. Some of them want revenge on the town, yes, but the overarching plan led by the eldest, Pearl, is never fully explained to us, and she essentially gets defeated before we get a chance to get a proper explanation. Like, the whole time she's there, we don't know what Pearl actually wants. It keeps changing, and then she just dies along with her friends. Oh hey, a new black character! Damn, there aren't a lot of them in this show. I can't wait to get to know him. I'm sure we— oh no, he's dead. Well, that's a bummer. I'm pretty sure that won't become a habit with this show, though. I think we're fine. The entire plot line around the council was probably the worst part of the season as a whole. The council is essentially a group of adults from the founding families of Mystic Falls, along with the mayor and the sheriff, who know about vampires and stuff.
Ah.